Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the creator economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Meaghan O'Connor. Meaghan leads B2B at Mastercard and she's previously at HP, recently joined Mastercard. There's a ton of exciting and innovative things that she has worked at previously on HP, but also currently in Mastercard as well. So I'm really looking forward to getting into the conversation. Meaghan, a pleasure to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you so much, Marcus. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So everybody knows, I think, there's not many people that don't know the brand of Mastercard. It's an iconic brand. It's very well known. But for people that don't know, apart from the business, maybe you could just give them like a kind of a 30,000 view overview of like the business behind Mastercard, what it does, what you serve, who your customers are.
I think we have a very interesting job at Mastercard because the amount of people that would tell you they know who their network provider is on the back of their credit and debit card might be very few. But the amount of people, if you mentioned priceless moments, priceless experience to, they would say, I know that brand, that's Mastercard. So Mastercard is a payments network provider. We are basically the rails that payments flow on and are processed on. So it creates a very interesting marketing job for us because there's never a situation where we are selling any of our products, cards, solutions, AI, agentic, whatever it is, directly to a customer. So we sit in a B2B2C world or a B2B world. And there's a lot of layers to that, obviously.
And it's an exciting space to be in. How does that look like then, though, when you're from a marketing standpoint? I know that like the B2B to B and then B2B to C, when you think of then like even just like planning and kind of objectives for the year, how do you plan based on that like kind of chain of distribution, shall we say? What way do you look at it, and what are kind of like, I don't know, KPIs that are effective when you're doing a strategy around though, it kind of try to engage those audiences as well.
It's complex because in a traditional tech or hardware or product world, you can start with the revenue you want to generate and work backwards from a business KPI perspective. With Mastercard, we live in a world of transactions and GDV, so gross domestic value that comes from spend on card. So it's been a learning curve for me, I won't lie, as I've started Mastercard, but we've really separated it into two functions. So whether we're trying to drive change in the top of the funnel, which is your traditional brand metrics, your saliency, favorability, awareness aided for things like commercial payments and reference to Mastercard, which we have a lot of work to do there. And then you have your bottom of the funnel, which is where we're really trying to push acumen on how we can tie to GDV. There's a very complex revenue formula, but what I'm focused on is more so your traditional or not so traditional in the past couple of years. Goal within each account, how many issuers are we trying to flip this year? What are the changes we're trying to drive? And then where can marketing add value? So it all comes back to everyone's favorite terms, marketing influenced opportunity and marketing generated opportunity. We still play in those zones, but the math of how we work it back and tie to actual revenue can be a little willy-nilly. So we try to focus on change within the accounts specifically.
Sure. GDV, can you just, what does that stand for?
Gross domestic value.
Gotcha. Okay. So does your business model then, is it based on a percentage per transaction? Is that how Mastercard works?
That one we'll have to cut it out, Marcus.
No, that's fine.
Rate.
No worries.
Yes.
No, we let it out. That's fine. There's no problem. It's just out of curiosity.
Is set by the Fed and governing bodies in each country. And then Mastercard operates off the set transaction.
Okay,
fee.
I know what you mean.
So we won't ever say that we relate revenue to it for that reason.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's literally like a mortgage vendor in a sense of like you have to kind of go off the baseline interest rate that they set. Gotcha.
And how we recognize that revenue, because the percentage can fluctuate depending on how it's set by the committees and the FTC. It's loose. So we term that GDV or transaction volume. Transaction volume is 1 to 1. We're trying to drive X transactions on our network, which equates to X amount in revenue. So that one's a little bit easier to measure.
Gotcha. Just out of curiosity, then, so like Mastercard's been around for a long, long time. The brand, as we mentioned before, iconic brand. You work with banks, and I would say like there's probably not institutions. It's difficult to name institutions that you don't work with that are in a transaction base. Do you see like say companies that are kind of the last say 5 to 7 years? I'm just thinking like Airwallex, Stripe, these kind of vendors that are more like kind of payment merchants.
Yeah.
I know that are they kind of complementary to your business in a way, or
Yes.
are okay they are.
We have, and I just got an overview on it the other day, so I'm not an expert, but a huge facet of our business is partnerships with global, regional, local partners and new players in the payments processing, payments acceptance, cross border transaction, remittances, disbursements. There's thousands of companies that play in this space. Stripe is a really good example where we can partner with a Stripe or a Square, for example, to basically give our customers and our issues better platforms to ultimately run those payments on through partnership because it's all a balance of issuance and acceptance. You can issue as many cards as you want, but if those partners you're working with don't accept payments or use the rails that have been set up for more security, less fraud, then it kind of doesn't work out for that end user at the end of the day.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
From coming from HP then into this role, HP is like a traditional business in the sense of hardware, laptops, printers, and so on. Now you're coming into a business as transaction based, and we mentioned as well like the B2B to C, B2B to B model. Do you see what do you see as kind of like the biggest opportunity in the space now that you've got into the role from your experience in the B2B space? Like, what are you most excited about now in Mastercard that you
Yeah.
see possible?
It's kind of I would say in the B2B space specifically, I work in commercial new payment flows, which is just a fancy way of saying how businesses pay and get paid and move money. And it has been an untapped space for 10 years. If you go back and you look at any executive over time talking about what the future of payments is, it's B2B payments. But it's very hard, it's very nuanced. There's so many different levels of influence, whether you're working directly with issuer, directly with acquire. If you're working with a total non-traditional partner, right? Maybe a company that does manufacturing of consumer goods and they want to pay and get paid on card, but they don't know how to set up a card program. So there's all these spaces to the point where it's almost too much opportunity, right? And so as Mastercard, honing our strategy and where we want to play and focus on and make the biggest impact in the next year is exciting to me because I think it's a totally net new territory for us. And whereas HP, it's their business, right? They live and breathe B2B. They've been doing it for 100 years. It's what they do. It's what they've been doing. So it's fun. It's a little bit perplexing at times, but that's where I'm most excited to be.
No, it's definitely is. B2B space then within Mastercard of like B2B payments then, is there particular kind of sub verticals that you kind of see, okay, look,
Yeah.
there's really big opportunity here. And is that kind of based on transaction, or how do you evaluate like kind of where to place your bets?
So there are, I don't want to get the number wrong. So if I misquote, we'll have to adjust it. But something in the realm of like $8 trillion worth of B2B payments, small, medium, large, that are done cash, check, EFT, right? So there's a huge space of just payments in general that are not happening on rails. The risk there is a ton of fraud, a ton of security risk. If you were to even look at the US government, for example, I mean, we spend billions of dollars just because checks get sent to the wrong place, right? So moving these payments onto rails, getting businesses onto cards, specifically small and medium sized businesses, and then the host of benefits that come from card is going to be a very big area for us. They make up a huge percentage of that 8 trillion that I referenced because so many of them still operate on cash and check. We have some really interesting research that came out where we partnered with payments and basically did the state of SMB, and you still have 80% of transactions happening on check, but 40% of those business owners will tell you, well, we'd love to get off of check, but we don't really know how, right? So really focus on SMBs, how we can support them, how we can work with our partners to make those programs easier for them to adopt.
Because I could imagine like the amount of time and admin and everything like that. Like if
Yeah,
I guess people are people generally are creatures of habit. So it's
no,
like if they're used
definitely.
to doing that, but the time that you can save rather than having to post a check or
And I
I can
mean,
imagine it's a no brainer.
there's crazy stats that get thrown around where if you were doing a payment on check or cash, you are recording it manually unless you have set up an expense management system that can capture it, but there's still manual logging that's happening no matter what. So you will have businesses operating in Excel spreadsheets with 27 tabs of payments that they need to track and then back of house that they need to hire against that. So there's just some really interesting areas. Payments are only one piece of it. There's expense management, there's customer acquisition. So all these things that basically come in once you digitize your payments, right? So there's a lot of cool things that are coming.
Definitely. Do you see then from working like with and looking at like SMB companies generally, is there still a huge opportunity for digital transformation? Because I think in the tech world we kind of live sometimes in a bit of a bubble. We assume that
Yeah.
every company is set up like that. But I don't think that's the reality in a big scale. But just from your perspective, I guess you're doing a lot of research on the SMB space, but from the companies that you look at, do you still see like digital transformation that a lot of them are like maybe even not even gone through that process fully yet, that
Yeah.
there's still a huge amount of them that
Right.
still need to do that?
Digital transformation is a very enterprise word. When you have a team of 150, can pay millions of dollars to put in an ERP digital transformation system and team, you are doing that. When you are a true small business, and of course there's different categories, there's small, there's market, but let's say you're 20 employees or less. Let's say you're 5 employees. You have to keep reminding yourself, and I always love to ask myself, do businesses actually need this? Like, do they want this? And they are so focused on things that wouldn't even come into my mind day to day. They are worried about cash flow. They are coordinating logistics, suppliers, distributors. They're trying to make sure their vendors are getting paid. They are making sure at a minimum that their business is running and they're keeping their customers happy, who they probably have a one-on-one relationship. So in a world of enterprise and tech where digital transformation is just every day in our lives, I think there's so many businesses that have not even begun to think of this, take advantage, and they want the help and they're hungry for the help. But most of the time they need to understand that first step, and it can't be a hindrance to their cash flow or what their day-to-day activity is.
So when you look at marketing to those type of audiences, then how do you like? What do you see that works now with those? Is it kind of like typical pain points, or are you also, is there a committee, a small committee involved, whether it's the owner and then there's somebody that does the books, or what? How do you look at B2B to an audience like that then?
Yeah. I think a lot of companies are B2B in a true form, right? And so they get to talk directly to these SMBs, which we do at Mastercard. We do a lot of community support. We will do small business sessions with our experts and leaders within Mastercard to give them guidance on how to address some of these things. We'll bring them into consulting sessions. We will bring them to marketplaces at all of our events to help sell products, gain insight, and gain awareness for the business. But we don't actually sell to the SMBs. And that's what's so interesting about MasterCard because we have so many benefits for that ultimate end user. But we're talking the world of payments, which means there has to be a partner between us and the SMB that ultimately enables whether it's card, whether it's acquisition, whether it's acceptance, whether it's cross border money transfer, right? We work with partners and issuers and traditional FIs to make this happen. So, yes, there is still a buying committee for all of those things, but there's a huge element that almost sits outside of marketing where you are building these programs and services to make sure they are then beneficial for that B2B enterprise partners customer base. And so that is something super interesting that we as MasterCard are, I would say, really experts at. Like something that has impressed me about this company so much is the commitment to the customer and the customer experience. Every company says it. It's, they love to say it, but it's one where I've like sat here and witnessed it and been very impressed with how it's not just the enterprise, but all the way down to the person actually using and paying with the benefit.
How does that look like then when you work with partners? Like, so when you're saying like it's kind of, the customer first and so on, is a big part of doing that really well and executing it really well, having a really strong partnership network as well, would you say? Or is it
Yeah,
also kind of like both with kind of taking regular, how I
absolutely.
suppose such a big brand like Mastercard, how do you constantly get a pulse on that? That you're in the right direction, or that you can kind of have a feedback loop if, I don't know, if there's kind of maybe a dip in sentiment or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I love to say that Mastercard is the original tried and true account management company. Like they are experts at partnerships, account management, co-marketing, partner marketing, right? That is what they're known for and what they do. The priceless experiences, the going together to large sponsorships and events with whether it's a community, a regional, or a national institution. And so that requires personnel on every single account and partnership who are sitting there and meeting weekly, monthly, not only getting feedback loops, which is like a super burn, but MasterCard's been doing it for years, but engineering new ways to entice those partners' customer base. So I would say we are probably closer with our partners than at any company I've ever seen because they're so important to us. They are our foundation, right? And that just unlocks some really interesting ways of marketing working. It's a lot of person to person. It's a lot of that you can't use AI for. It's a lot of things that you just have to sit down and get in a room and hash out and make sure your value props align. And so it's been really cool to see that and then bring that B2B perspective since I'm more on the acquisition of said partners, that side of the business. But watching how they do it, it's like, a lesson in mastery. It's really cool to see.
I think there's a lot to learn there as well, because the fundamentals of having really good partnerships, of like having that one to one and that it scales and so on, is probably goes against the whole automation thing that we
Yeah.
see now. But let's see in 10 years' time how effective automation at scale is, and whether
Totally.
there's like, I don't want to use the word regression because I don't think
Yeah.
that's the right word, but there's no real substitute for kind of like one to one human interaction. COVID taught us that as well.
Yep. It's funny because I had this observation when I came to MasterCard that there's a lot of buzz around ABM and one to one. In my opinion, the co marketing and partner teams at MasterCard are doing one to one ABM. They serve with a team of 2 to 3, 1 to 3 partners max, and they are working with them on a constant basis to deliver co marketing, priceless experiences and programs that are truly delighters to that partner's customer base, whether it's a traditional bank or the stripes of the world, to your point. It's such a simple thing because in a world of automation where everyone is yelling at you to do it faster, larger, personalization at scale, my least favorite word, by the way, my least favorite sentence. I would love for that to go away. Be the company that puts a human on the account with their own thoughts and ideas, who is welcome to leverage AI and personalization tools as they see fit. But the delighter at the end of the day is that it's a real human totally focused on you that you're working with. That is one of the truly most impressive things I've seen about MasterCard. I think it's a dying art, the art of true account management and partnership and coming together to deliver an actual value prop for those end users. It's like marketing 101 from the first marketing class
Yeah.
that was ever launched. And they will never move away from it because it is a core tenet of MasterCard business and something I really respect.
And it's good to see them like to keep core to their beliefs as well. It's really good to see. The other thing you mentioned as well, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is on community. And if you observe a lot of the new AI scale ups, I know that it's a broad term and everyone has a different kind of definition for it, but I noticed that they are really trying to lock into communities in local regions now
Yeah.
through hackathons, through whatever it is. But from your point of view in Mastercard, how do you look at communities? What does it mean? Like, what kind of a growth driver is it for you as well?
Right. I wish I did more work with communities in my role. Sitting at the enterprise intersection of B2B and MasterCard, when I really get to interact with communities, it's when we do small business summits, Marxism will really localize it. We'll do it at the state level. So interestingly enough, we have a summit coming up in New York City where we'll basically bring businesses, issuers, corporates from all around the region of New York, surrounding states, and bring them in to experience what it is that they all have to offer and hear these businesses and hear what they need. and those pain points and how they can address them and also support them. But one thing that I think is even more interesting than that, that I'll give a shout out to our issuer marketing team who I work with, is that they truly do go into communities. They will go to the National Bank in Little Rock, Arkansas, and they will put on an event with a bank that maybe has a footprint of 23 banks across the whole state, and they will cater it fully to what that community needs and is interested in. So that can be at the collegiate sports level. It could be for elementary and middle school and families to come in and experience how to set up a checking account, like things that seem so simple in its essence, but a lot of communities are left out or not thought about because it's not at big enough a scale for most companies to really sink their teeth into. So it comes back to that same idea of humans interacting with humans and meeting actual pain points versus business needs on a slide that, track to billion-dollar growth. Those communities are still the underlying, portion of what we do. Community banks are some of the largest subsets in the United States, and oftentimes they're forgotten about, but not in what we do. And I think that's really cool.
It's true as well. A lot of people talk about like do things that don't scale, and there is a value there as well. Of I was chatting to Robin Daniels. We had him on the show a while ago, and he was one of the earlier employees in Salesforce, and he was talking about like back in the early 2000s that they used to just go from state to state and just kind of evangelize about the product and kind of getting people
Yeah.
to from Oracle
Road
onto
shows.
Salesforce. That's literally what it was like. And he was just saying it was, you really believed in the product, but you were evangelizing and slowly it began to build as well. So I think even when you get really big, if you could do that and you don't lose sight of that, there's obviously a huge value and people feel there's an affinity then I guess to the brand as well when they see you doing that.
Yeah, I would say so. I think the Mastercard brand in itself is one of the strongest brands in the world. Priceless was, I don't want to sound too millennial when I say a moment in time, but it is something that has sustained brand awareness, favorability, affinity for years on end. The question we now have as Mastercard is what does that look like and what does it become in a B2B hungry and focused world, without losing sight that at the heart of Priceless is an emotional tie and experience for the individual. So I think it's a big question for us to answer. I don't think it's a quick decision to be made. I think it's something that will take care and consideration to think about, right? And it goes back to that, in a world that's telling you to move faster and optimize and personalize, things like these, you still need to take a step back and say what is right and what makes sense for the brand long term.
There's kind of there's two schools of thought, isn't there? In terms of like you have the ones of like you need to be cutting edge and innovative, and then
Mhm.
System One, who I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
they do a lot of research on like kind of effective advertising, and a lot of the time the research comes back the ones that score really high are the ones that have been in market longer with the same message, and it just
Yeah.
kind of compounds over time. So I guess that's similar for Priceless, and it's been in market so long that people have that affinity and they know what it represents as well. And then it's kind of okay, how do you maybe not reimagine it, but how do you kind of position it in a way whereby you keep that, but that you don't lose all the memorability that's been built up with it over the
Absolutely.
years as well. When you look at sponsorships then and experiences, so like you were saying, you touched on there about earlier on when we were talking about, account management partnerships, how it's really something that is really, really important for the company. And it's notable when, as you've said, you've seen as well. How do you think about sponsorships and experiences then? How do you see them? Any of the big events recently, Arnold Palmer, the golfing event, but there's a number of ones that you're involved as well. When you look at that from a B2B standpoint, how do you think about it for sponsorships and experiences as well?
Yeah, I think it's a good segue because it's almost the question to answer, right? So, what does priceless mean for enterprise and B2B? And then how do sponsorships potentially exemplify that or add to it? And I think what's interesting about sponsorships is if you look at it in a very traditional sense, it is brand awareness and brand movement to a crazy level. When HP partnered with Ferrari, I think it boosted our brand in a way that hadn't happened in years just because of the amount of eyeballs that are
Mm.
on it and the buzz that's talking about it. So even over at MasterCard, where you have partnerships with McLaren F1, PGA Tour, Arnold Palmer Invitational. There's so many that I don't even work with directly. How do you make it work for B2B? This is the age old question. And I think what we ultimately learned at the Arnold Palmer Invitational is that you basically have to plan a wedding for 12 brides to make this work for a B2B experience. You need to consider hosting. You need to consider business sessions. You need to consider your broadcast and digital message, on course experience for the general fan population. You can't ignore the fact that you are still at an event where the fans are there to consume and watch golf. So you don't want to shove your brand message down their throat in the wrong setting. So there's a consumer element to it. And it ultimately became this dance of let's stop talking about sponsorships in the sense of all up ROI, and let's talk about what we drove from each segment of the sponsorship, whether it was our hosting program, whether it was our demos in a consumer facing booth space, whether it was the LinkedIn campaign that we launched in coordination with that to drive conversation around specific elements of the message we were speaking to. And so getting out of this world of all up, what does a sponsorship do for us, and breaking it down into really bite-sized chunks of where can it move the needle for different audiences within different needs that all can attend or be a part of said sponsorship events. And that was something that was really interesting and effective for us. The question will be, how do we repeat it? How do we scale it? Our favorite word. And how do we produce more content out of these things that's then usable, digitally in ABM, in lead gen, whatever the company might be running, so we can kind of capitalize on our production costs as well.
How do you look at then the B2B creator space in Mastercard? How are you looking at that from a marketing perspective? It's something that's grown huge
Yeah.
in the last few months and years. From as a marketing standpoint in B2B, what's your perspective on it? Like, where do you see it as being something that's kind of can add a lot of value, or do you think it's something it depends on what kind of partnerships you have with those creators?
I think it depends. And I almost hate the word creator and influencer because you've gotten in this space where all of these historically consumer creator and influencer agencies have seen the dollar signs with, and as someone who literally hires B2B influencers, will come to you with these people who are still a consumer facing lens, but they don't realize it. I say to be a good B2B influencer or key opinion leader, you need to be a respected voice. So, for my customer base, for my enterprise decision makers sitting at the C suite level on procurement, IT, finance, do they listen to your content? Do they respect your content? Are you collaborating on research and insights that is of interest to them and they are digesting it where you are serving it? These are all things any B2B marketer would care about. But you have so many agencies missing the mark by saying, well, this guy talks about credit cards. And I go, that's great. I'm sure my issuer would love to hire him to get people to use more credit cards. But I need a CFO to believe in what we're doing. I need their opinion on us to change, that we support B2B at the enterprise level. So we need someone who influences. And there's so many good examples out there. I call them key opinion leaders, right? It's a lot of AR, it's a lot of PR. And I don't know if I can name drop, but it's people like that is where I think so many creator agencies get it wrong. And I sit through so many briefs where I'm like, it doesn't have to be big scale. This doesn't have to be somebody that we're paying millions of dollars a year, but it has to be somebody that's thinking and focusing in a true B2B space, not with a consumer lens.
I couldn't agree with you a bit more there on the perception piece, because I think the playbook, or for want of a better word, has kind of come from B2C. So
Mhm.
people think this person can kind of have a big splash, big reach, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really necessarily impact or shape perception with somebody in a procurement team, or if it's a CFO, somebody maybe with a very small following, but that has a very
Yeah,
in-depth insight on a particular pain point or a challenge with that particular subset could be much more effective than just some well-known creator
absolutely.
that's very active on different social platforms. You're right as well.
My litmus test is almost if you took this creator influencer and you sat them down in a room with an owner of a business or a procurement person or a CFO at a company, would they be able to hold a conversation for 30 minutes? And would my customer be engaged with what they have to say about mass remittances and cross border transactions and security at scale, right? Things like that. And If the immediate answer is no, then I think we need to pivot. We might work for someone else. And we maybe, just a thought, should be looking into actual business owners who are trying to build a platform, right? So there's a lot of interesting ways to go about it. It's new, so I'm excited to see what happens in the space as these traditional B2C agencies get more feedback and they hone their craft. But I think we're still at the beginning of it.
Definitely. But it's a good point you make about the business owners, like even in say there's probably a huge opportunity for them to even partner and kind of give their insight
Absolutely.
than the traditional B2B kind of like now slash B2C creator that you see in the space. When you're looking at those, then like what have you found as useful? You mentioned about the litmus test of like making sure that they can hold a conversation and so on, but the agencies that you work with, normally what's like apart from that, what else do you look for when you're looking to partner with good B2B creators?
I think my number one, my immediate yes or no that I'll look for is, was their original job and the way they got here by just being a creator? Just because you have a LinkedIn page doesn't mean you have the authority to speak on a number of things, right? What I need you to speak about. It's more of, if you looked at, let's take a traditional analyst, for example, Forrester analysts. They spend their entire career niching into a very technical space that they ultimately become experts on. I am looking for that. And I am looking for, now, can you speak it back to me like I'm five and take that technical subject matter and boil it down and have a really interesting opinion and a really interesting explanation on it? And from that respect and the way you tell your stories, have you created a following from that? That's one part of it where I think you can find some much smaller creators in the space, or you have a lot that I like to call the professor track, where they spent 20 years in multiple different companies and roles, still working on a specific area of expertise. And they have now ultimately become a key opinion leader and in the space because of all that history and knowledge that they've gained over their career. That's what I'm not saying that's like hard set rules, but that's typically what I'm looking for when I go into these conversations about B2B influencers.
It's skin in the game, really. At the end of the day, isn't it? It's like
It's skin in the game.
yeah, you can get the reach and you can get the additional attention, but if you scratch beneath the surface and there's no substance there, it doesn't really resonate at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, if you bring it back a tale as old as time, what do people respect more than anything? Tenure, experience, time. So many new hungry voices that I respect, but you cannot change the fact that trust is the currency that has been there since, I don't know, the dawn of the age, right? And that's what we want to lean into on B2B. We want those voices to be respected and we want them to have an opinion that is educated, thoughtful, and catered to the audience that we're ultimately trying to reach.
That makes sense. Megan, it was really good having you on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. There's a lot of exciting stuff you're working on in Mastercard. Where can people find about more? Anything new that's coming along? Content that you share? Any new partnerships that you have? Where are you most active?
Yeah, I would love to say that I'm most active on LinkedIn. I am working on it. So find me there and I'm committing to posting more. And secondly, is our Mastercard newsroom. I mean, it is the most well kept newsroom I've ever experienced. And it has all of the interesting, whether it's community, whether it's sponsorships, whether it's our movement in AI. Our comms team is working hard and keeping everyone up to date on all of these things. And I would say I would go there.
Great, great. We'll put a link on the show notes as well
Yeah.
to your LinkedIn and to the newsroom as well on Mastercard. Megan, it was great speaking with you. Thanks very much for joining us on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Marcus. Cheers.